people from the YouTube. Hi, people from the YouTube. We're just 2 minutes late. Said, apologies for the wait. But we're all here, so you don't have to wait any longer than that. Ta-da! Welcome to Floxies community, our Wonder Wednesday, crushing it hard as always. Today's guest speaker will be Vimalan and his fantastic solution for the Webflow forms, which is something that many of us have been waiting for a long time or struggling with. So many people here are super excited to see how you kind of developed this multi-step form solution. And Vimalan, we were just having a chat, and you were telling me that you're from Malaysia, but you're based in the UK, in London. So do you want to give us a little bit of a brief introduction on your background and how did you manage to start ViDesigns and then consequentially like your community product, which is now Formly, and the multi-step forum that you will be presenting today?
Thanks for having me. I think I've been looking at the Floxies community since the early days. On LinkedIn, Claudia is always posting on LinkedIn, and that's where I met Felicity as well. So that was like the first Malaysian Webflow developer I knew besides myself. A quick intro about me. I'm Vimalan from Malaysia. Came to London 8 years ago. Oh wow, I'm so old now. To study, and then I sort of just prefer it here. I'm so used to London and how to do things in London, so I decided to stay. I graduated last year. Yeah, this time last year I had my graduation. Exactly this time last year. I graduated as a biomedical engineer, nothing to do with design or Webflow or web or anything in that area. But I had some programming knowledge. I used to code in uni because it's part of my program. And then I discovered Webflow randomly on like a random day while procrastinating from final year uni work. And it just sort of clicked on to me, like having that ability to build whatever I want. The issue I had when I was coding is that I knew how to code, but I don't know what to do. What can I build? And that's always an issue for me. It's like I learn the skills, but I don't know how to apply it, and then I forget this. But Webflow just made it easier for me to put things I've already known into the web and share it with people, and eventually find clients and start making some money from it. And then VDesigns was just always just been me, but slowly sort of like started growing it this year, just organically. I'm not doing it on purpose or anything like that. It just happens. And then Formly was just something that I never thought I would do. It just came out randomly. I wish I knew how I thought of Formly or like how we came to create this, but it just happened quite randomly, and I didn't expect the amount of feedback and support from the Webflow community we had for just this one product. But yeah, I would love to show you guys what we could do with it and
Yeah,
see if you guys build
looking
anything useful.
forward to that. It's just fantastic and inspiring already to see like such a diverse background. And I was just picturing you like on a rainy day in the UK, trying to take a break from my studies, and then Webflow, what is this? And then that's a whole new world, a whole new sun ray coming through. And that's what kind of happened to many of us here that kind of switched career or became something that they didn't necessarily thought they would be. So that's really interesting. And yeah, I'm curious to see how you stumbled upon Formly and how it kind of developed as well.
Yeah, I think so. A pre-introduction to Formly is that I think all of us, when we do multi-step forms on Webflow, it's either we just tell the client to use Typeform or some other form solution just because we can't do it or it's just too difficult to do it on Webflow. And even if you want to actually do it on Webflow, we have these different clonables from different companies. They use the slides or the tab component on Webflow to create a sort of mock multi-step form. But the issue that we always run into is that it's not a proper solution where it's not scalable. Clients cannot go in and change the fields. Beyond that, it's just not the way multi-step forms are meant to be built. For example, if you have slides and you have an error being thrown on slide 1, but you're on slide 5, the user doesn't know how to go back, or they don't know why the form is not submitting. And this is the issue I had for one of my clients before. And the only solution there is to code it yourself. Um, so what we sort of did is we thought before this project, there's one project that we released, which was the CMS search, where you can search and it filters your CMS, similar to like Google, similar to Google, where as you're searching, the CMS sort of filters by itself, like predictively search. And that was our first step onto creating products and solutions like this, where it's not just about creating it, it's also about seeing how people actually use it, catching all these different bugs that you otherwise wouldn't really run into. If you're building it for a client, they're going to use exactly the way you tell them to use it. They're not going to, do anything beyond that. But when you're releasing a product where people can use it to build whatever they want, you need to be able to catch all these small features and bugs that otherwise might be a deal breaker. So I work with a JavaScript developer. So he's part of ViDesigns the first full-time team member. He's also from Malaysia. I knew him through Felicity, who I knew through the Floxies community.
Look at that circle. Beautiful.
I know. So, so when I sort of reached out to him initially to build like some small things for clients, formally just sort of organically happened. We chatted about it. He was very interested, and he built the CMS predictive search, and based on it, we sort of figured out, okay, this is the sort of streamlined way to build products. It doesn't need to just work, but it needs to be easy to implement. It needs to be less confusing, and just more user friendly. It's less about the product than more about the experience. And then formally sort of came about just organically like that. As I said, our main goal was to just make it as easy as possible to create multi-step forms and give you all the features that you would expect from a form solution. And we spent like 2-3 months. Just the solution was already done in like a week, but the rest of, like, 6-7 weeks was just nailing every single component down. We just kept adding features even before releasing to the public, just because I wanted to make sure when we put it out there, it's a fully fledged solution. There's nothing coming soon. There's nothing like, oh, this is just a demo. It's like when it's out there, it has to be a fully fledged solution. And when we dropped it 2 weeks ago, I swear I didn't expect the response. I
It
just
was
thought,
huge. How many people, even just by mentioning that you were coming here today, the girls from the community were super excited because and they asked me, is he going to talk about Formly? I was like, yeah. So they were really thrilled about that. So you must have definitely found a solution for a problem that was there, but nobody really had thought of tackling before.
yeah, I thought it was just a random solution because it's such a small niche thing. Like, I don't really know how many people actually build multi-step form. So my expectation was like, it's gonna, some people are gonna find it useful. Most people wouldn't care because it's such a very random thing that we just put out there. But the amount of response that we got on Twitter, LinkedIn, and just the emails that sort of kept coming in just blew me away. Like, I knew the Webflow community was there and it's supportive and it's awesome, but I've never really felt it. It was only that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when we put out the product that I actually felt, oh, there are this many people that are.
You felt the warmth all of a sudden.
Yeah, it was just unexpected. That's the only word I could put in. I genuinely thought only 10 people are gonna like it, or 50, at most 50 people are gonna care about it. But then when it started blowing up, like my friend Shays, he just screenshot it as like, bro, you're blowing up. And I looked at my Twitter, I had like 20 notifications and like so many likes and retweets. I was just, yeah,
That was a
it
good
was just
impression. That
unexpected.
was a good impression of Chase as well.
Yeah, he's been like my number one Webflow friend, and to be fair, he's like a friend now. He's not just a someone that I used to talk Webflow with. We talk about so many other things, and we were just both geeking out. And formally, is sort of, he was always the first person to know when whatever we are doing. He's always the first person that I share anything, and he's the one that told me like, oh, it's blowing up, and he gave me advice on how to actually tweet about it, because
Uh-huh.
I'm not a huge person on. I don't really use social media a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
he told me like, oh, this is how you should caption it, put in a video, and then follow up that tweet with a link. And I just did exactly what he told me, and it worked.
Nice, nice. And now you're here showing us all. So yeah, should we have
Yeah,
a
it's
look
just
at it?
yeah. Let's go. Let me share my screen, and we can just walk through formally and what we can actually do with it, and then I can show you what we have actually built as clonables, as well as a couple of features that are going to come in um, soon.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the main page, tryformly.com. If you go in here, you should have pretty much access to everything that you need to get your multi-step form set up. So the way it works is you paste in a script. So this is the script that you copy and paste it on your site. And then you add an attribute to your form element, which is not your form block, but just your form div
Mm-hmm.
right after the form block. You just add one attribute to that, and then you add one attribute to each of your form step. So every single step in your form, you just give this attribute data form equals step, and then you add three attributes to three buttons. So your back button has an attribute, your next button has an attribute, and your submit button has an attribute. And that honestly should give you the full control of your form. Like that should set up a multi-step form in less than like a minute. And this is an example of it. There's no power ups or anything like that on this example. This is how your basic multi-step form could be built. But we went one step ahead and we just built out a metric ton of features that we think might be useful. So of course, the first thing would be a progress navigation. You need to tell your user which step they're on and how
Mm-hmm.
many steps there are in this form. It's just a good practice for UX. And again, for that, you just need two attributes, one for the entire div that contains all your individual indicators, and then one attribute to your individual indicator, just one. And then the code will sort of duplicate it and populate that div for you. So you don't have to copy and paste multiple times. And then while we are doing this, we released a little bit of a teaser, like a beta test. And some users said, what if I want to create my own progress navigation? So we
Mm-hmm.
took that and we allow you to create your own progress navigation in case you don't want something simple like this. You can customize your individual progress navigation item, and you just give um, this attribute to one of your indicator, and then the rest of it should just take care of itself. And then we had, again, a lot of these features came from the beta testers. So there's one request where, what if I want like a intro card, like something like Typeform has
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
Again, for that, just add one attribute, data card equals true, and that should set you up for it. And then most of it is super easy. Just when you press enter, you should be able to progress to the next step. So you just add this attribute. You can you can submit the form if you hit command enter, similar to type form as well.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just add one attribute, and then we add a lot of input validation. So if you want users not to be able to go to the next step if they don't fill it out, you can just check the required box on Webflow, and that won't let the user go to the next step.
Okay. So they don't get
Which
like an error. They don't get like.
No, so as long as you don't fill this out, you
Mm-hmm.
cannot go to the next step. So if you remove it, you cannot go to the next step. So
Mm-hmm.
this prevents you from getting empty submissions or missing any key details from your form. And also it's a good user experience because you just don't want them to skip to the end and submit the form like an empty
Yeah.
form.
Yeah.
And then email inputs are automatically validated, so you cannot simply enter. Um, let's see if I have an email somewhere here. Should plan this better. But yeah,
No worries.
so if you look at this, it's an email field.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot just simply enter this and submit your form. You have to, and you cannot just simply do this. It has to form a proper email um, template. So it has to be at something dot something, and even then you cannot just have dot m. It has to be dot co dot uk or an actual proper email submission. And we're gonna add a feature where you can add an attribute to remove Gmail submission. So if you don't want spam or non-business emails to come through, you can just add an attribute. So at gmail.com wouldn't work.
Okay.
Yep. And checkboxes, again, sometimes you want people to select multiple items before they go to the next step. Let's say you need, if you have a checkbox, you want people to select at least one, you can add an attribute, and that won't allow users to go to the next step if you don't have that attribute on. Again, all of these features just very easy. Whenever you need, just get to the documentation and you can get it. There's another ton of features in the actual documentation site, which we don't have on the landing page. Stuff like automatically progressing user to the next step if it's a radio input. For example, if you're building a quiz, you don't want them to click yes and then next, no, next. You don't want these multiple random clicks. You can add an attribute so when you click yes, it just goes to the next step automatically. Even there, we gave you control on how long the delay is as well. So you just add an attribute and and control the delay of that. In case if you want to show the current steps that you're on, you can just add one attribute to your current step and your total step, and that will dynamically populate as you're going through the navigation as well.
We have a question from Brandon in the chat.
Yeah.
In terms of integration, so like, can you save the form data to a third party, like database, like Airtable, Google Sheet?
Yes, so this is built on top of Webflow form. So whatever you would normally do with any Webflow form, you could do with this. So what Formly is basically just a multi-step library. It's not a form, it's not like Typeform where it is its own form solution. It's sort of a library on top of Webflow. So if whatever you do with your Webflow form, you could still do when you have Formly integrated. So that means you can integrate it to Airtable using Zapier or Make or whatever what other integration solutions that you normally use, you should still be able to do so.
And how long would it take you to build a form from scratch now? Say, for example, you open a Webflow blank page and it just shows us how to use it in practice. Would that
I
be
think
too
yeah.
pretentious?
I think we can, but let's see. I think it should take less than maybe 5-10 minutes.
All
I
right.
think.
Yeah, I think it would be
Cool.
nice to, to
Okay.
show step by
Yeah, let's
step
go.
how to create a multi-step.
Cool. Let's create like a basic contact form. Let's
And
say
all of a
for
sudden it turned into a tip-tap lesson
like
with all the
like a
steps.
it's like a live build. I hate live builds because I always get something wrong. But let's do this. Cool. So what we can create is like a very simple basic contact form where you ask for their name, their
Uh-huh.
email, maybe what services they're looking for, and then what's their budget or something like that. And each step would only have one question just to keep things a bit simple. Um, Again, don't look at the design or anything like that. It's gonna be pretty bad. But cool. So first of all, you'll add your section. You can, again, it doesn't need to be on a separate page. You can actually have it on on a page that you like a landing page like we do here. It literally wherever you can have a form, you can just have a multi-step form. So it's not necessary that you have it on a separate page. Um, cool. So let's set this up.
And Brandon is commenting, fantastic, thanks, great approach. Yeah, you see?
Thank you.
Nothing to be
Cool.
scared of.
Cool. So now this is the main step. So let's drop in a form block in here. And so this is your form div. I'm just going to remove all the items inside. Um, let's do it in this step. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to copy this script onto the page. So if you open up your project settings, just paste it before your body tag, paste in the code, save that. And then in your form block, give this attribute data form equals multi-step. Right. Oops. Cool. So here in this form block, just go to your attributes page and give it uh, data dash form equals multi-step. Well, that's attribute one done. And I'm just going to style this 100%. Remove this. Okay, cool. Now here you would drop in a div, and we will call this steps wrapper. So this is where you'll have your individual step items. Um, and let me just bring this form block full height. Cool. And then in your steps wrapper, I usually just give it a flex box so that it's easy for us to organize. And then drop in a div block inside, call this step item. And cool. What we do now is let's make this.
The UX Voca Club is saying speed build challenge. Well, there's don't worry, there's not a timer here. You can just like I think this is actually really helpful to see, like for people like me that need a kind of step by step. Okay,
Yeah,
it looks great, and the documentation is great, but how do you actually do it? So that's what I
yeah,
need.
yeah. Cool. I think it's useful for me to actually see how easy it is to build as well. So you have your step wrapper and you have your individual step items. To this item, your step item, you add this attribute data form equals step. So all these attributes sort of named in a way where it's easy for you to remember. Once you build it one time, you probably won't need to go to the actual documentation unless you have an issue. But it's very easy to remember data form equals step. And now this is your first step in your form. The way the code sort of works is that it hides steps that are not the current step and shows the step that you're on. So what we normally do is drop in another div inside your step item. And this is where you add your flex box or any grids or whatever you want to put. You drop it inside your step item. Usually step item, you just give it a height and a width. That's it. You don't really style it too much.
Mm-hmm.
And only inside the step item, you will have your, let's call it form content, right? Let's call it form content. Again, I'm going to give it 100% width, give it a flex box, align it in the center. I'm going to drop in a label. Oops, label, label here, and I'm going to drop in an input inside. Give this a flex box, center, maybe a little bit more spacing, increase the size. Cool. Let's limit this to 400. Cool. So
Nice.
now you have your first field, let's say name,
Mm-hmm.
and that's done. Next, you just duplicate this and it goes to the next page. But for this, let's. What is going on? I'm just going to color the body itself. Again, ignore all the.
That's the best part.
Cool.
So
Let's
right
see.
now, right now the form works in a way that it's kind of a scrolling thing, scrolling up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is how you would do it. So you have each step as like its own. It just takes up the full width,
Mm-hmm.
a full height. So you can just leave it as is. You don't have to hide it. So let's say your client does want to change the fields or anything, they can just do it themselves via
Mm-hmm.
the editor. No, not the editor. They have to come into the designer to do it, but it's not too difficult for them to do so. So let's put in email, call it the email field just to see validation works. And in case if you want users to sort of be automatically focused to your input, you also just check the autofocus checkbox. So every step it just auto focuses to the input and you can just don't have to click on it.
Okay.
So now we have email, we have name, and let's drop in one more. Let's do.
Ivan is saying visual learning is great. I agree, Ivan. Totally agree.
Yeah, that's how I learned as well from Ryan Segal, Pixel Geek, just watching them for hours just build something. So yeah, definitely agree on that as well. Let's see. Okay, let's give it a message. So 3 steps. And now how do you so now this should work, but then there isn't a navigation button to actually go to navigate through the steps. So what we normally do is you can add inputs in here. So you can just drop in a button and you give this an attribute data form equals next btn. So it's this button short form,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just call this next No, not next.
Neck.
Next, and then for this one, next as well as a back button, right? And for back buttons, you just give it data form back dash btn, right? Now this hopefully should work. So we have this attribute multi-step, we have individual step
Mm-hmm.
attribute, and we have your button. So right now we only have next and back, but you can, so when you do, let's say this is your last um, input, you can have your form button in here, and then to this you add data dash form equals submit dash button dash btn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, let's see if this works. There you go. So as you key in, no, that didn't work.
Gotta check those buttons.
Why didn't that work? This happened to me on my live build as well. Yeah, there you go. So so because it's required, you cannot go next until you actually give me your name.
Mm-hmm.
You go next. Why is it not going next?
Did you paste the script? I think you did.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
It is working. Let's give it another. This is the issue with live builds.
Yeah, I mean, we all love that. Brandon says there are so many great use cases for this and the future with Webflow logic.
Yeah, so that's when I realized as well, because with Webflow logic and membership coming up, more people are going to be filling out forms on a Webflow site,
Yeah.
and especially if you're signing in users, you don't want to have a ton of fields on one page. You rather split it out one at a time. And I think this something like this, like a multi-step form, is a great use case for that. If I can get it to work. Oh, why is this? Did I do something wrong? Nope. I have no idea why.
Maybe you were thinking maybe it wants an actual name.
I probably gave someone one attribute. I have a spelling. I cannot spell things properly. So
Could it be the
form.
space after the... There's a space
Yes.
there after the inverted commas at the top next btn.
No, not really.
The custom attributes. Yeah, that one there.
Yeah, I think, to be fair, if that doesn't work, this works. Yeah, that is weird. Let me see if I can pull in. Sorry about that. This happened. It's funny because this is the same thing that happened to me on the live build, and I didn't know what was going on, but it didn't affect all the other forms that we actually have. Like this is also using the same sort of code base, so I have no idea what's going on.
Well, I guess it's good for you to to know when somebody tries to build this, maybe that could be something they run into. There could be a hidden issue somewhere.
Yeah, I really don't know what's going on, but I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. It's good to... Yeah, I thought it was that space there, but no, maybe not. Maybe because it's required. No. Can you uncheck the required and see if...
Could be. I think it's... Let's see if that works. No,
because now it's not required, so it doesn't let you go.
Yeah, it should let me go. So yeah, that's probably some issue in the way I built it. Yeah, I have no idea actually. Yeah, anyways, it should work. And I think an example would be something like this. It's if you go to our Webflow account, you should see this clonable, and it is a clonable, so you can build it and see how it's actually built.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, technically it should work pretty much like this. It's using the same code base, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's just my fault the way I built it, or something. Um, Something to do with cookies, maybe. I have no idea.
Well, keep that one for you, and then after we can check the clonable and see what the issue was, because it would be nice uh, to share
Yeah,
the troubleshooting as well. That'd be
yeah.
cool.
I think, yeah. Let me just open up the clonable. I think that might be more useful. Let's open up this one. So if you go to the clonable, you should see all the attributes that I've added as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, so data form equals step, and this one doesn't have an input. So if it's just like an information card between your inputs, you give this attribute data card equals true, and that will allow you to skip, sort of letting the code know, okay, there's no input here, so you can let the user go to the next step. And pretty much, yeah, this is how it should be should be. So data form equals step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so and each of your step will have that attribute. And then let's say you have checkboxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a checkbox, and you want users to at least select one. The thing with checkbox is that they can be optional, and people can just skip to the next step if you don't want to select it. But in case you do want people to select at least one, for example, what services are looking for, you don't want people to not select anything, you can give this attribute called data checkbox, and the value is the number of inputs you want them to select. So let's say you want them to select at least two,
Mm-hmm.
and you give that a publish. They cannot go to the next step without selecting two options. So
Mm-hmm.
this would be good for you to validate your leads in a way so that you don't get spam leads. So let's see if that works here. Yeah, not this one. Yeah, so for this
Yeah.
one, you see, it's not going to let me go. Even if I select one, only if I select both or more than two, it's going to let me go.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can't go back. And then for radio inputs, let's say like this one, like how many pages are you looking at? You don't want, ideally, you don't want the user to click, 1 to 3 pages and then hit OK. And especially if you're building something like a quiz, or you have multiple radio inputs, that extra click might get a bit annoying. And if you just want the user to directly skip to the next step, once they select their option, you can give this attribute called, what is it called? Data. Just making sure I don't make a
that's
mistake.
that's why it's so important to have a documentation. So you guys did a great job having it all written down, and it's so
Yeah,
important to have for all
yeah,
builds.
yeah. That was a reason why it took so long, because the documentation had to be like
Mm-hmm.
properly done, and we have to account for all things that could go wrong, because there are ways that you cannot actually build, like the one I showed you. So if you do run into any issues, the documentation does cover what happens, if you do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you give this attribute data radio skip equals true, it's gonna allow users to skip to the next step once they make a choice. Here I'll show you what if you don't add the delay. It's gonna be almost an instant. Um, so let's see. It's gonna almost instantly redirect the user to the next step. So if I click on this, it is almost pretty much instant, and you don't want that, because you want the user to know what they actually clicked on. Um, so what you can then go and do is add another attribute, and this is called data radio delay, and the delay is set in microseconds. So if you select 250 microseconds, that's going to delay going to the next step by 250 microseconds, just so that people have a visual indication of what they actually click.
Mm-hmm.
and and also you can have multiple next and back buttons. So if you realize, each of this step actually has a next button. This OK button is sort of a next button, and there's a universal back and next button as well at the bottom of the
And
page.
do they work if I'm not filling anything in? That would be interesting.
No,
Okay.
no, they don't. So for this one, it's pretty much going to mimic whatever this button is. So this is the
Right.
next button.
Yeah.
You cannot go back, but you can always go back, but you cannot go forward unless you actually fill out the form.
Okay.
And then let's see if that's already published. Cool. So this one is gonna, have a little bit of a delay. So if you realize there's about a 250 millisecond delay before you go to the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And one other feature that you can also have is, let's say they're filling in the name, they can just press enter to go to the next step as well. So especially if you have a lot of input fields, you don't want them to keep clicking on their mouse. They can just type and hit enter every time.
Yeah.
And that works for checkboxes as well. So if you select all of this and hit enter, it just skips to the next step as well.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Cool.
Cool.
And yeah, that should cover up most of the key features.
That's really cool. And did you get access to the logic, or did you try it out? Can we have a sneak peek?
Oh, Webflow logic. I don't know whether I'm allowed to show that. But I can show you another logic. So formally does come with conditional logic,
Okay.
meaning you can skip unwanted steps. So let's say you have a pricing page and you have multiple pricings for design, development, custom code, branding, and you want to build a page for, maybe customers to select what they're looking for, and it just takes them to the correct pricing page. You can actually build that using Formally. Conditional logic hasn't been launched yet, but we're going to be releasing like a test version to people who signed up just to get some feedback on it. And the way it works is you only need two attributes, and I can show you how that would work. So this is a quick example that I built earlier today, just sort of testing out conditional logic. And you can build a quiz, you can build games, you can integrate it with your normal multi-step form. So for example, this is a quiz. Should it cook or order in? So when you start quiz, are you broke? When you hit yes, it takes you to this, like a final step. But you can go back and hit no. It takes you to a different branch. And then here you can select yes and no. If you hit no, it's gonna take you back to the original answer. But if you hit yes, it's gonna give you a different option. So this is all done with no code. It's just attributes.
That's cool. That's cool. We have a question about quizzes actually. Is there a way to mark the quiz, like say they got the response correct or not, to go to the next step? Like, is there a way that you can clearly see whether they got it right or wrong?
Not To be fair, you can do it with logic, because so let's say you have a quiz with 4 options and only one takes you to the correct answer. The rest 3 could take you to a false page, like a different section.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can give you an example of how it's actually built as well, just so that you can actually do something like that. It won't be properly checking an answer because it's just yes or no. But let's say you have how many light bulbs how many Webflow developers does it take to change a light bulb? And you have 4 answers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe 0 is the correct answer. Only 0 takes you to the correct page, whereas the others just take you to like a false, like, oh sorry, wrong answer. So you can do something like that.
Yeah.
But the main use case would be to build like flowcharts. So let's say if you have flowcharts of, users can choose what they are clicking on and it takes them to a separate page. This is a great way to build, and you can build games with it. So based on what input the user clicks on, they go to a different sections. So let me see if I can pull up a fun example that we did before. So yeah, so this is a quiz, sort of a very interactive quiz that you can actually build. And it's all built with attributes. There's not even a single line of code besides the code that you copy and paste in. So if you select, yeah, Claudia, let's play this. So are you a leader or a follower?
Leader?
Cool. Are you controlling?
Yes. This is putting me on the spot.
Do you try to fit in?
No.
No. You're Dwight. But yes,
Great.
and each option gives you a different character as well. So if you, let's say you are not controlling and you like to be in center of attention, you're a talkative person, you try to be funny, you become Michael Scott. So you can, as you can see, this whole thing was done with no code. You just need to have a very clear flow chart of,
Yeah,
where these inputs go. And yeah,
that's
you can pretty much,
great.
yeah. So this is like the BuzzFeed quiz that people used to take a long time ago. Now you can create your own one
Can
without
you
writing any
share the
code.
game, because I think people want to play it.
Sure. I just, it's just a test project. So the URL is pretty long, but I can, do I put it in the chat or
Yeah, sure.
yeah. I should have planned properly.
There it is. Hillary feels like she's a Oscar.
But
Okay.
yeah, and then this is like something you're going to be putting out this week is like a account creation. So if, let's say, you do have access to Webflow membership and when it goes live this year, it's going to work natively with Webflow forms, so you don't need an automation tool. You can pretty much use Formly to get user data like this. And then, once logic and membership both go live, you can
Mm-hmm.
then link this up to your Webflow logic, and that takes care of itself as well. So it is going to be more powerful once Webflow starts releasing more features.
That's really great. And, I think, yeah, definitely it's going to be like the bridge, it was like the missing tile connecting all of those things. So, yeah, well done for stumbling upon this solution and, just making it work for all of us. So that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
Let's
just
see if people here have got any questions about this
yeah, sure.
form. I can see Cash. Oh, Penny, you're back. Nice to see you again. Um, let's see. Right, people around the table, if you do have any questions about the form, either, jump on your mics or put your hands up wherever you prefer. And the same thing applies to people in the chat on the YouTube. If you have any more questions about it, Vimalan is still
Yeah.
here for another couple minutes to answer all your questions before I put him on the spot again.
In the meantime, I'm gonna try to see why this didn't work. So live troubleshooting.
Oh yeah, that would be great to know as well. Yeah, I feel like people are playing the game.
I should have designed it properly. I think, yeah, I just left it halfway when we built it.
All right. Well, I don't think there's questions coming, but as you try to troubleshoot that issue, did you come up with other solutions in the past as well, or is this like your first haha moment that you had with Webflow?
I think we did have a couple of solutions. I think the tools page was sort of introduction to all of this. So I created this earlier this year around April, just put together mainly for my use actually,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the times, I'm looking to create a slider component, or I'm looking to create like a CMS count items and all of that. And I just felt like I already have this code. Why not just put it out there? It might be easy for me down the line when I need this feature as well. So it started off with just very simple, fun things. And then the first major one that I think went a bit big is creating your own WebGL gradient.
Yeah, that's
So
beautiful.
thanks. But yeah, that was like a whole no code thing as well. So you could create your own WebGL gradient. You can just clone it, but there's also a different page where you can customize it as well. And then, as I said, this was the first project me and my developer sort of worked on, is this sort of CMS stacking slider. So I did build one of this a few, I think it was last year or year before that, but it wasn't CMS powered. So then I just went back again this year to make sure, like, because a lot of people who actually clone it come back and say, how do I make it CMS?
Mm-hmm.
I have more than 3 items. How do I add the fourth one? And I had no solution for it. And so this was sort of the first project that got into it. Everything is just attribute based. Again, trying to keep, again, it's not very simple because there's some code that you still need to copy and paste. But we try to keep it very attribute friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And then yes, then the next big one was CMS, predictive search. So for this, you can have, so let's see if I can find the clonable. Yeah, so for this, I think it sort of went a bit m- more technical, but you can have, you know, you can search for recipes, but you can already see how you can use this for articles. When you have like thousands of blogs,
Yeah.
you want to create like a knowledge base, this is a very easy solution to do so. And it just filters, it's all CMS, this is all CMS, and when you click on it, it takes you to the CMS page directly. And again, all of it's done through attributes, 4 or 5 attributes, and you get it done. And then we added like power ups as well. So if you want URL parameters, you want you want multiple searches, you want to search through multiple categories, you want to combine CMS, you want multiple instances of this search. So that was our first forte into like actually building a sort of a useful tool. And then finally, I think we ran into Formly.
Mm-hmm. Brandon's got an interesting question. What's the price for the solution?
It's quite expensive. It's free.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's completely free for anyone to use it. Yeah, there's nothing much to pay for it.
Just your soul in return. Be a forever follower. But that's great work. It's fantastic. And I didn't know it's the first time I see your tools page. I just shared it in the chat. I think it's great. Not just as for you, like personally as a developer, like to keep things organized, because that's what you're saying you did that for that purpose, but I think it's so useful for the whole community, and it's just it shows the great work that you did, and yeah, I love it. Yeah, thank you for sharing
Thanks.
that.
No worries. And I think, yeah, it sort of comes from the whole FinSuite refocus. Whenever they do all these things, when I first started out, like, I still look up to them, and they do so much more. So I felt like I was gonna charge for Formally, but then I was like, if they can put like CMS likes for free, we should contribute something as well. So I think we just left it free, just for that. It's just, to be fair, that it's very difficult for me to even, once we start asking people for money and all that, it just becomes a lot more difficult, and we have to keep track who's paying, who's not, and I just didn't want to deal with it. So it's completely free. You can take the code, and we have a few people who already customize it to build more complex things, because it doesn't rely on Webflow natively. You can add JavaScript on top of this. So let's say you have a quiz where it's going to count how many people click yes, how many people click no, and give them, based on your score, goes to a different page, like a personality quiz and stuff like that. You can build it. Of course, the code for that counting and all that's going to be your own code, but you don't have to write multi-step code from
Mm-hmm.
scratch every single time you build. So it's always like a base layer, and then you can always add on top of this.
That's fantastic. And I think, just not even for tracking pricing and all of that, but just giving to the community is gonna come back to you anyway in such a
Yeah.
good way.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what, that's what we all do, and like we just like sharing and just helping each other out is just one way or another, it comes back to you in a great, powerful and positive way. So I'm sure that will just do the same for you and your beautiful work. Mirella is
Yeah.
saying that, yeah, Hilary says, you're awesome, Vimalan. Great
Thank
job,
you.
from Mirella. So, yeah.
Thank you. But also, yeah, I think I found the issue.
Oh, great.
So if you,
Let's see.
if you look here, I made a rookie mistake of copying the form content and not the step item. So that's why it didn't work. Uh, that so that means I just need to delete all of this, and I just need to copy and paste my step item, if that makes sense. And then now if I just put this attribute, it wasn't allowing me to go to the next step, because there was no next step, if
Right.
that made sense. So let's quickly just see if this works.
What a fantastic way to, ease us towards the end with another solution.
It's a storytelling 101, is to hook the users and then give them a solution at the end. Cool. And then, yeah, let's call this okay, I'm just gonna paste this in here. ignore the design. Go back.
UX Vocal Club says, I'm a rookie, so this is perfect.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it could have done. It would have been better if it was worked straight up, but it's fine. I think if you just rewatch and then skip to this part, you should have a full.
And then it turns into a TikTok video. Like, why having a 60 minutes whole conversation? Yeah.
just to watch us build.
Just skip to the end.
Okay, cool. So we have. Okay, now let's do correctly. So there's 4 steps on your form. Everything has an attribute. Okay, no, you shouldn't have this. Cool. So each step has an attribute. Your first step. Now this should work. Let's see. So if I go next, there you go. So I can always go back, but I can only go next if I fill this in. Yeah, everything's working. Yeah. There you go. And then when you submit this, it's gonna submit the form if I filled it up properly.
Yay, well done.
Thanks. And yeah, just a last bit is that the next feature is going to be remembering user input. So if let's say someone fills out a form and they just close the tab halfway, when they come back, we're going to use local storage just to remember which field they have filled in and what they filled it in, so that they can resume the form when they come back. So they don't have to fill it up from scratch again and again every if they leave the form.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good. Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
But now that you've tackled that kind of challenge, what do you think your next solution will be?
No idea. I mean, we do have a couple of ideas on the website as well, on the tools page. So if you do go to tools.vdesigns.uk, scroll all the way down. So right now, conditional logic is in development, but then there are like some other tools that we are sort of exploring. So there's a Chrome extension. It's still in the very early stage, but looking at the amount of
Yeah, it looks
people
like
that have
people are looking for that. Yeah.
yeah, so we might look into that. And then there's a CMS upvote. So with two attributes and a script, you can add CMS upvotes like this one onto your Webflow site. And then there's a 3 power-ups for Webflow tabs. This is going to be a smaller solution, but it's going to allow you to create URLs for each tab on your website. And that makes it easy for you to share. So if let's say you have 3 different tabs and you want people to go to the 3rd tab with just a URL, you can just send that to them and it just takes them to the 3rd tab in the page. You can have autoplay tabs with an attribute. Yeah, just other useful tabs,
Yeah, that's really
power-ups that are
great.
going to come.
Yeah, that's really, really fantastic. And I feel like yours is one of those agencies that it's really fun to be working for or working at, because you're not just creating projects for clients and websites. You're actually, you love the tool. It's clear that you love the tool, and you're trying to find ways on how to improve on it and like how to make it better and keep on rocking it. So this is really great. It's great to see. It's inspiring because it's fairly easy to be an agency that develops websites. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that there's a lot of those. But I feel like this adds so much value to the whole community and to all those agencies as well that are possibly be looking for more solutions, but they maybe don't have the means to create them in-house. But yeah, this is fantastic. And to me, as a community person, I truly appreciate all the work that goes on top of everything else that you do. So
Thank you. Yeah, it means a lot. And to be fair, I really enjoy working on like internal stuff, and formerly was just a huge sort of fun thing to put together a website like this. And there's no clients telling us, oh, this is too much, or it's loading slowly, or stuff like that. It was just pretty much whatever we can throw at it. We did, as well as just thinking of ways people are going to be building it, just figuring out bugs and squishing it and just collaborating a lot. Is very interesting to build this sort of products on top of client work. Just keeps things a little bit more interesting as well. So there's a little bit of selfish reasons to why I actually want to do more of this.
That's great. Well, thank you so much again, Vimalan. I think time has come because I'm very mindful that the next speed build challenge will be starting in
Oh yeah.
3 minutes. So I guess I will see everyone over there very
Cool.
shortly.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you for having
thank you
me.
so much for being here with us this week.
No worries. Thank you.
All
It's
Thank
right.
nice.
you.
Thank you.
See you very
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
soon.
Vimalan.
Thank you.
And bye to the YouTube people. See you next week as well.